Hi everybody. I'm going to give you a short introduction to how to do some more interactive things with p-applets, which are the framework that we've been using for our turtle programs. I'm going to show you three things: how to draw some basic shapes, how to have your shapes move around, and how you can have your shapes follow the mouse. Let's start by just setting up the simplest thing that will work. You could copy one of your existing turtle programs, but I'm going to show you how to set it up from scratch. So create a new Java project. Let's call this one Graphics Experiments. Find it in your tree to the left. And we'll create a new Java class. I'm going to call this one Graphics Experiments also. I do not want to create a main method, so make sure that this box is not checked. If you remember from before, from when we were doing turtle programs, we'll need this to say extends p-applet. See, there's a capital P and a capital A. It doesn't know what p-applet is because I have to include core.jar in my build path. So this is the same thing as before also. You have to find the very top level folder here at the left, right-click, and go to Properties. Go to Java Build Path, the Libraries tab, and now you can find where your core.jar is. For most of you, it's on your USB key. If you don't see it on your USB key, you can go to Computer, C Drive, and you want to look down the list of folders until you see one that says Processing. You probably want one that says Processing 2 dot something. If you double-click on it, double-click on the top folder every time. So I want core, library, and then you should see something that says core. Okay, click OK, click OK. And now you can hover over p-applet and tell it to import. So all of that is exactly the same as the last time. Now let's create the basic template for our graphics program. You'll want public static setup. Oops, sorry, not static. You want public void setup. And then underneath where setup ends, you want public void draw. This is new. We've never had draw before, and I'll tell you what that does in a minute. The first line inside setup should say size 600 by 600. This is the width and height of your window. And that's all we're going to set up right now. Because we're not going to use turtles anymore, we don't need to create a YRTL object, nothing like that. Alright, so let me teach you two basic drawing commands, and then I'll show you where else you can look. So the first drawing command you might already know, it's called line, and the way it works is you give it 4 inputs that represent the x and y coordinates of where you want to start. So here I'm going to start at the point 10, 10, and then the x and y coordinates of where you want the line to end. So I'm going to draw from 10, 10 to 50, 60. Well, I've done this in a comment, so it's not actually going to draw anything. So let me make a real command now. So 10, 10, 50, 60. And if I run my program, you should see that it's drawn this line here from 10, 10 to 50, 60. If you remember the way the coordinate system works for these windows, 0, 0 is here in the upper left-hand corner. And as the y values get larger, the points move further down. So when y is positive 10, that means I've gone down 10 pixels from the top. So that's why you can see right here, I've gone over 10 pixels and down 10 pixels, and that's 10, 10. Here I've gone over 50 pixels and down 60 pixels, so that's 50, 60. Alright, that's the line command. Let's do another command called ellipse. I think you've seen this one before also. The way ellipse works is you say ellipse, and then you give it the x and y coordinates for where you want the center of the ellipse to be, and then you give it the width and the height of the ellipse. I'm going to make my ellipse 100 wide and 50 tall. So let's look at what that looks like. When I run it, you see it's centered at 30, 50, and see it's much wider than it is tall because this 100 has told me my width and the 50 has told me my height. This is not actually a full diameter, so it's not 100 all the way across. It's 100 from the center to the edge. So that means it's 200 all the way across, and it's 100 from the top to the bottom. Alright, well, so we're not doing anything very exciting yet. These are two basic drawing commands. Let me show you where you can learn all of the rest of the drawing commands if you want to. If you open up... what am I trying to do? If you open up a web browser and you go to www.processing.org, this gives you the documentation for all of the different graphics commands that are possible. So if you go to Reference and you look under 2D primitives right here, you'll see the two commands I've talked about so far. Here's ellipse and here's line. And if you click on ellipse, it gives you an example of how to use the command with a picture and a little explanation about what these inputs are about. So you see the first input is the x-coordinate, the second input is the y-coordinate, and so on. You see there's a lot of other things you can do also, though. You can draw a rectangle, you can draw a triangle, any of those things. Okay, so let's talk about a new thing, this draw method. If you draw up in setup, it's just going to draw on your screen once, and that's all. So you can't have any movement that way. I'm going to delete all of these, or rather I'm going to cut all of them, and I'm going to paste them inside the draw method. Make sure it's actually inside, so your new lines of code should be after public void and before that closing brace. What draw does is automatically draw gets run over and over and over again forever. So it starts at the first line, it does every line of code. When it gets to the end, it starts again at the beginning. So it's almost like there's a loop here, only you can't see the loop because it's not written in. It's just automatically looping as part of the natural way that the program works. Alright, so when I run it now, well, you see it's doing the exact same thing that it did before, and you might be wondering why nothing's changing. It is actually running this over and over and over again, but I'm drawing the line and the ellipse in the exact same locations that I was before. If I want them to move, I need to change the coordinates that they're drawing at. To do that, let's make some variables. So, up here right above setup, let's create an integer variable for x and another for y. Inside setup, you're going to tell those variables what you want them to start at. I'm going to use these to control where my ellipse is. So I want my ellipse to start at 100 and 100. I'm going to add a comment here so you remember what this is. This runs once at the very start, and the purpose is tell the ellipse where to start drawing. Okay, so down here in draw, this is where we're drawing the ellipse right now at 30, 50. So I'm going to use my variable x and y here. So now whatever numbers are inside x and y, that's where I'm going to draw the ellipse. So it's not going to move yet. It's still stationary because right now x and y are both 100, but I'm not changing these two numbers. So as this is going over and over and over again, it's still just drawing at 100, 100. Let's say I want it to move to the right. I need to increase the x-coordinate. So I can say x equals x plus 2. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to draw the ellipse at 100, 100. Then I'm going to add 2. So now the x-coordinate is 102. And when it comes around from the top the next time through the loop, now when it draws the ellipse, the new x-coordinate is 102. So when I draw it, you see it very slowly moves across the screen. Okay, let's make two changes. First, I want my ellipse to look more like a ball rather than a strange oblong shape. So I'm going to make it width and height the same. The second thing you might be wondering about is why is it leaving this trail behind it? What's happening is it's drawing the ellipse on top of the old ellipses. So each new ellipse, you can see the old ones left behind. I don't really want to see them left behind. So if you put the first line after draw, if you put the command background, this will paint the entire background a single color. So what will happen is it'll draw the line, it'll draw the ellipse, when it gets back up to the top, it's going to paint over everything that you just drew. So now you'll have a blank screen to draw the next ellipse. So now when I run it, you can't see all the other ones from the previous drawings because they've been painted over. So now we've got some simple motion. Okay, let's try and make it wrap back around. So when it goes off the right-hand side of the screen, it comes back on the left-hand side of the screen. I have to test to see when is it off the right-hand side of the screen. So I'm going to use an if statement. I'm going to say if the x-coordinate is bigger than 600, that must mean that it's going to display off the right-hand side of the screen, because the screen is only 600 wide. So if my x is larger than 600, I must be off the screen. So what do I want it to do? If the x-coordinate is larger than 600, I think I want to set the x-coordinate back to 0 again. So that's going to make it jump back to the left-hand side of the screen, because that's where 0 is. If I run it now, we wait till it hits, and now it's jumped back. And so now it's looping. So that's how you can do basic motion. I think you should experiment a little bit with making this number bigger and smaller and see what happens, and think about why that makes sense. You can try changing the y values and see what happens. What happens if we do -2 here, or -5 here? Can you add another if statement that will make it loop back from the left-hand side of the screen? These are all good things to experiment with. Let me show you one last thing. I'm going to delete everything we've got so far. You don't have to. You could comment it out if you wanted to. There's two special variables that keep track of the location of the mouse all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an ellipse, but it's going to be located at mouse x, mouse y. If you've typed this correctly, they should highlight in blue, and that means that it already recognizes that they're variables. The number inside each of these variables is the coordinates where your mouse is, and these are updated all the time automatically. So what this is going to do is, as we're looping, it's going to draw an ellipse right centered at the location where my mouse is. And when you run it, you see that the ball kind of follows the mouse around. If you remove the background statement that's painting over, you'll see that it also leaves a trail behind it, because you get to see all of the old ones. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to show you right now for your experiments. Oh, let me show you one last thing. I'm going to draw two ellipses. I'm going to draw one that follows the mouse, but I'm going to draw another one that is mirrored from the right-hand side of the screen. So when the mouse is on the left-hand side of the screen, I want the circle to draw on the right-hand side of the screen. And I'm going to do that by subtracting how far the mouse is from the left, and I'm going to take that same distance and I'm going to subtract it from the right. So now I should have two ellipses, but they follow each other in a mirror pattern. I think this is another interesting thing for you to experiment with. Let's try this one where it only mirrors the x-coordinate. Now the y-coordinates of both are the same, but the x-coordinates are opposite. So your goal today is just to try a lot of stuff and see what you can get it to do. Starting next week, we'll use these tools to create a very simple but hopefully enjoyable game. Good luck!